Newzroom Afrika is in a conversation with Vuslat Bayoglu, the co-founder and MD of Menar, one of the top coal mining companies in the country. He is a naturalized South African, but a native of Turkey who came into the country decades ago looking for opportunities, and he started in the mining sector. Now, with operations around the country, when it comes to coal mine, we are talking about something that is quite important and topical, which is the just energy transition and what impact he believes that might have on the economy and job and energy security in the country. This is a topic that has divided many worldwide. South Africa is a country that is rich in coal, and he is an investor who has invested for many years in that particular landscape. That's not all, because he is on the boards of Future Coal, which is formerly known as the World Coal Association, and also the Richards Bay Coal Terminal. Vuslat, thank you so much for your time. I want to start with your time, growing up in Turkey and deciding eventually to come to South Africa. What brought you to South Africa as a mechanical engineer, having brought your experience, and how was it like?
My journey started in South Africa in 2001, and I first visited Cape Town. I came with a job offer, and I didn't know much about South Africa, and internet was not as widely used as it is now. And when I got the invite from a company for a work interview, the job interview, I was first skeptical about it, like, okay, should I really go and try? And eventually they sent me my tickets, and I arrived Cape Town. I found it amazing. I think Turkey doesn't have a city like Cape Town. And I stayed there for about 2 weeks. I learned a little bit about the city and the expectations from my previous employer. And I decided to take the job offer and went back to Turkey, applied for a visa, and came back after 3 or 4 months. Later started working in a factory in Atlantis in Cape Town. So at that time, look, I was really interested in trying to find out myself, like what do I want to do in life? How do I want to contribute to the society wherever I'm living? And I found out that it can be South Africa, because it's a gem actually. If you look at it's a gem, hidden gem from the world. Beautiful country, very good people, and a lot of opportunities. And I thought that I should actually make a living in South Africa, and I started considering seriously, what can I do here? What are the opportunities? Then after my contract finished 2 years later in Cape Town, I decided, okay, look, Cape Town is beautiful, fine, it's a nice living, but the opportunities are not in Cape Town. The opportunities are in Johannesburg, because this is the economic capital of the country. And I decided to move to Johannesburg, and we started our business with my business partner. And then since that day, it's going very well. And we started very humble with coal trading, and later on involved in a coal mining company as the managing director of a coal mining company. And then in it was about 2005, we started our own business, and then we prospered from there onwards.
Why mining? Mining is has a deep history in South Africa, but it's such a difficult business to be in as well.
Look, South Africa is a mining country, first of all, and when we had a consulting business with my partner was always saying, like, how can we get involved in mining in South Africa? And he was telling me, like, almost every week he was reminding me, and I was telling myself, listen, I mean, this country has a history of mining, and there are major mining companies. Is there anything left that we can get involved? I was a bit skeptical about that, but then at some point there was an entrepreneur from Turkey who has invested in a coal mine in Middelburg, and what happened is actually they bought a mine, prospecting right, from a Turkish bank, which gave money to investors, and they couldn't make it, and then they sold it in an auction, and then he came here and he was looking for somebody to run it. When I heard about that, he actually approached us to be part of his business. I said, no, this might be the opportunity, because we were trying to get involved in mining, and we didn't know how to get involved. And this gentleman has got a prospecting right, and we can get involved, and we can turn it into a mining right, and then develop the mine, and then take it onwards. And we found out actually later on that it was an operational mine, and they made some mistakes in terms of managing the business. Hence, the business went into liquidation, and then bank decided to repossess the mine and then sold it in an auction. So that was our actually start. It was interesting. Like, I think we called it, and then it came to us, and then we got involved with that opportunity, and that was the point that we started learning about mining in South Africa.
Would you say, having been in the business for nearly 20 years now, there are still opportunities in the mining sector for those who are looking at mining as an investment opportunity, particularly local South Africans? And I'm saying this because a lot of people talk about mining being a sunset industry.
There are a lot of opportunities in South Africa. There are a lot of opportunities in the world in mining, but specifically South Africa, because we talk about it. Beautiful country when it comes to legislation, when it comes to rule of law, when it comes to freedom of speech. A lot of investors are very much interested in investing in a country like South Africa. Infrastructure is there, human capital is there, and people are aware that they need jobs, they need to create jobs, and government is very much aware of that as well. So these are all like positive things. Obviously there are things that are not right that can be fixed, but no country is perfect. There are a lot of, if you compare with other countries, there are a lot of pluses that South Africa has. So the biggest challenge is the entry is difficult, because it's very expensive to get into the business. So in this case, for the emerging entrepreneurs, mainly, I'm talking about like black entrepreneurs, they need the support of the government, they need the support of the financial institutions, especially like IDC, PIC, Development Bank of South Africa, Southern Africa. These kind of institutions, they need to support the black entrepreneurs. So I think there is a bit of like an issue at the moment. It's lacking because people are struggling to get involved in the business, but we have got a lot of successful businesses in which are emerging companies in coal mining. I can give you names. There are a lot of successful business people also in chrome and manganese. That these are like, they started from small steps, but then they grew over a period of time. I don't think mining is a sunset industry. It's actually getting better and better every day, getting stronger and stronger every day. I mean, we didn't talk about gold, for instance. Gold in a world of uncertainty, gold price is high, as I think it's now about $2,500 per ounce, which is great for gold mining industry in South Africa. So we have a rich country in terms of mineral resources. We have a rich country in terms of human capital, and we got issues that we need to sort out. So mining is not a sunset industry. Mining is an industry that's thriving.
Let's move into why you think some of those projects, like in ferro-manganese, are lying idle. I mean, we do have 6,000 mines in this country that are different minerals over the years that have been lying idle. Why do you think there is? Is there a lack of investor will? Is there a lack of political will? What is holding us back from actually turning around those mines and making sure that we can employ people and make some money?
That's one part, but the main part is actually, why did like these industries that are linked to mining industry, like smelting, be it ferro-manganese, be it ferrochrome, they came to a position where they decided to stop. And they also thinking even today, what are they going to do next year? So South African government need to have a stance about beneficiation. They already have it. They say that we need to maximize the beneficiation in the country, which is perfect. Okay, it has been always like that. They are consistent about this stance since I came here. But what they are not consistent about is how are we going to make the power? Because if we don't have power, cheap power, we can't run anything. If you look at what happened during load shedding, we lost 860,000 jobs. The cost of load shedding to this country in 1 year was $90 billion. Why did we lose that money? Why did we have load shedding? I mean, before Andre de Ruyter left, he was saying that grid is going to collapse. I mean, the whole country's power grid was going to collapse. Then Marokkan and his team comes. We are now in, I think, 267 days. No load shedding. How? What happened here? I mean, because they were talking about sabotaging during the previous administration. Who was sabotaging who? Because this is actually criminal, what happened. I mean, we are in Sandton. So these restaurants in the shopping malls, they couldn't carry on working during load shedding because they needed power. They didn't have power. They couldn't put generators to run the restaurants in a shopping mall. So the basic job creation, which are waiters and waitresses, that was killed because Eskom couldn't give consistent power to the country. Okay, so, and imagine this is a restaurant. If you run a smelter, you need to have consistent power. There should be no power disruption. And you need to have cheap power because you are competing with China. So China, think about it. China has got over 1,100 coal-fired power stations. I think the exact number is 1,142. But they're building a coal-fired power station almost every week. Okay. India has got 280. United States has got 210 coal-fired power stations. And do you know how many we have? 14. The whole world is on our case. Eskom should stop coal-fired power stations. Why? Where are we going to get our power from?
Very strong views. I want us to hold it right there, and we will be back with some more. We continue our conversation with Vuslat Bayoglu, who is the co-founder at Menar, one of the biggest mining companies in the country. The path that we are taking, what do you think of it? You already started on that one. Let's talk about that.
There are different ways of producing power. But there are two main things in power generation. You either have a baseload power, which is 24 hours a day, or you've got dispatchable power. Dispatchable power is like if you've got a windmill, then windmill runs when the wind is blowing, or if you've got a solar panel, it works when you've got sun shining during the day. Okay. So people are mixing these things, all right? And I'm talking as a mechanical engineer, right? I'm not talking as a social scientist, because I see a lot of social scientists are talking about these kind of things without knowledge. So you can get base load from coal, gas, nuclear, or oil. Okay. So hydro, wind, solar, these are dispatchable energy. These are variable energy sources. And we need to sort out base load as South Africa or any country in the world. Okay. Whatever dispatchable power you install, you have to back it up with base load. 100%. Otherwise, you then experience what Germany is experiencing. They've got 170,000 megawatt renewable energy capacity, 170,000 megawatt. And South Africa's installed power is 45, 50,000 megawatt total. And Germany has got 170,000 megawatt. And what happens when Russian gas is cut? They don't know what to do. Okay. They call it near zero event. Near zero event means that if the wind doesn't blow, if the sun doesn't shine, you don't have any power. So this actually energy transition policy of German government brought the government to a position where it collapsed. Because of energy security issues, German government collapsed. So it is a very serious issue. The government and the president need to take this very seriously. In a country where we are producing 84% of our power from coal, we can't stop producing power from coal. We can't. If you tell me that, I will ask you, what are you going to use to produce power? So we had a chat with one of the Eskom top managers. and they said they're going to produce power from gas. From which gas? Where is the gas coming from? Is the gas resource that we don't know, that they know? They must tell us, because we can't have another scandal, because we had a scandal of like getting renewable energy, it's going to sort our problem, we will have no load shedding. But we can't even get the power that's generated in Northern Cape to Gauteng. Why? Because we don't have the grid. So we need to invest like 400 billion rand to bring that power to Gauteng, or to take to KZN, or to take to Western Cape. We don't have that money. While we got coal fleet that's running, why don't we produce the power from coal and install the latest clean coal technologies so that we deal with the emissions? Because coal is not the problem, emissions is the problem. Okay, so that's why I said that this is a serious issue, because Germany pushed the power prices so high. The most expensive power in the world at the moment is in Germany, UK, and Italy. Okay, they're all big supporters of renewable energy. They say renewable energy is free. It's not free. You have to pay for the windmills. You have to pay for the solar panels that produces less than 6 hours a day. Whereas your coal, your nuclear, your gas produces 24 hours a day. And even if you got solar panels or windmills, you still need to have the base load, no matter what. So it's actually a nice luxury to have solar capacity and wind capacity. But in a country where we got so much gap between rich and poor, you cannot actually talk about these things. Okay, and that's where South African government is missing a stance. Gas, we cannot burn something that we don't have, unless they show us and they tell us that there's a gas field that's found and it's going to be used for so many years. You know, then we are fine. The other thing is nuclear energy. Okay, some people are against it. I don't understand that. Okay, so nuclear energy is a solution. Yes, it's expensive, but it's very cheap to operate. So it's expensive to invest. The capital is very heavy, but when you are done with the capital, then you can actually get very cheap power. So if you look at the nuclear power station in Cape Town, it's working very well. It's run by, I think, a French company, and it's actually powering Cape Town. So we need to be open to these two things. It's nuclear and coal, because I'm seeing that government might be making another mistake with this integrated resource plan, because there's a court order. I don't know if you read about it. Like Judge van der Westhuizen said that public health is more important than generating power from coal. So there should be no new coal-fired power stations. And I hope government is going to appeal to that decision. As a company, we won't appeal to that decision, because we cannot stop powering the nation with coal. We cannot stop it. So it's critical for our future generations to get cheap power, which would mean creating jobs.
What do you say to people who might say Vuslat is talking in this manner because he's heavily invested in fossil fuels like coal?
Okay, so this is my defense to that. We don't supply coal to Eskom. We don't supply coal to Eskom. We got no contracts. In the past, we supplied very short periods, a couple of months, because they needed coal urgently for Arnold Power Station, and they were getting from everybody. But we don't supply coal to Eskom. Our market for our coal is export. Our coal is burnt in India. Our coal is burnt in Pakistan, in Europe, in some periods of the year in China, or when they have issues with Australian coal. So our coal is burnt in mainly eastern part of the world. Okay, East Asia, let's say. That's the first part of the defense. Second part is, if you tell me that South Africa's got a better option, and if you show me the options, then I'm happy with that. But if you're telling me that we're going to solve the problem with solar, wind, and battery storage, it is not going to work. You know how much Germany spent for their power infrastructure with this, and also this 170,000 megawatt? $750 billion. $750 billion, and where they are now is they are in a terrible position. They're desperately needing power from Scandinavian countries, from France, that's producing power from nuclear energy. Why do we not learn? And I mean, we need to learn from these mistakes. They made a mistake. France didn't make that mistake. They said they will carry on with the nuclear-fired power stations. They've got a stable economy. They don't have issues of power. But Germany made a big mistake. Okay, so do we produce any windmills in this country? No. So how do you create jobs with renewable energy? We can't. So coal is creating jobs because Eskom employs people, coal mining industry employs people, and all the industries that is supporting coal mining and Eskom are creating jobs, and they are employing people. These are real jobs. We need to keep on going with these real jobs. So South Africa's energy transition journey cannot be just like, okay, no, we're going to use renewable energy plus gas, because we don't have gas, and renewable energy doesn't solve the problem alone, and battery storage doesn't give you 24 hours power a day. Okay, so it gives you maybe 4 to 6 hours more. So that means like if you've got a solar panel and if you've got battery storage, I'm not talking about the households, but I'm talking about the industrial scale, then you've got power for 10 hours. What do you do for the 14 hours of the day? So these are things like, we need to answer. If you don't answer these questions, then the question of like, oh, Vuslat is involved in coal mining industry, that's why he's talking about, it becomes mute. Because, I mean, I'm not saying these things because I'm in coal mining, I'm saying these things because I'm living in this country, I'm a citizen of this country, and I'm seeing the problems.
They will say what you are saying is something that is contrary to what the government and the country wants. What do you say to that?
Okay, look, I think there is obviously a massive pressure on South Africa to deal with the emissions, and the two biggest emitters in this country are Eskom and Sasol. Okay, and these are our flagship companies. We cannot afford to lose Eskom, we cannot afford to lose Sasol. They're as important as the other one. Like Sasol is producing so much fuel for the country, and it's a listed company, it's owned by South Africans and by international investors, and they're doing a great job. They're employing thousands of people. And look at the emissions in the world. Who are the biggest emitters? The biggest emitter is China. The second biggest emitter is India. US is a big emitter, okay? So these are industrial countries, okay? And South Africa is a big emitter, but not even in the first top 20 emitters. Okay. So they are telling us we need to stop these emissions, but they're not telling us what we're going to do. Okay, like let's say if you tell Sasol, drop your emissions by 2030, 30%. That would mean that they will need to use less coal, because they tried hydrogen and it didn't work. Okay, so their feed is coal. To cut 30% emissions means 30% less coal to be used. And that would mean that it will affect their viability, commercial viability. So how can Sasol defend itself? Sasol is, I think, doing everything with the current new CEO to defend itself, to make sure that they give the right message to the shareholders, they give the right message to the government, they give the right message to their employees. But they've got one big challenge: South Africa's policy about energy transition. Okay, they cannot change that. That's a government position. So government needs to decide what they're going to do. Can South African government afford to lose Sasol? I think the answer is no, a big no. Can South African government and can South Africa afford to have a failed Eskom? The answer is no. Okay, so our circumstances and Italy's circumstances are different. We are not producing Lamborghinis or Ferraris in this country. We're not selling our food and our tourism to the world. We've got 6 million people visiting us. Most probably Italy is getting like 40 million people a year. They've got massive tourism industry. They've got massive manufacturing industry. They feed the world with their goods. We don't have that in this country. We have mining industry. We have beneficiation, which is smelting. We have a little bit of tourism. We have agriculture. These are our main industries, and these industries need power. Okay, we cannot stop Eskom producing power from coal unless we have got an alternative. And we don't have an alternative at the moment. Humanity might find a way of producing power from solar panels 24 hours a day. Yes, by all means. But again, we don't have that option. So I think also with the changes in the US politics, the world is going to be more lenient about like what's going on. And also the bad example of Germany, like stopping nuclear, stopping coal. Now they don't know what to do, what to produce from, because they don't have gas, and they're getting coal from power from neighboring countries. And that's the other point that Xolani, I need to tell you. South Africa is an island when it comes to getting power from other countries. So if you're getting some power from Mozambique, from Kaurabasa, but if you look at like the neighboring countries that we have, they're actually not very rich in energy. Look at Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia. These are the countries that we actually supply power. That's the challenge, and that's why I'm saying that, and this is the first time I'm very vocal about it. South African government, which is led by President Ramaphosa, should decide what we're going to do. We can't be hanging in the air. We can't try to satisfy and please Europeans because they want to see a greener South Africa. Okay. On the other hand, our challenges are different. We've got issues with crime. We've got issues with service delivery. We've got issues with power generation, and that triggers the unemployment. We are the worst in terms of unemployment rate in the world. I mean, imagine if they had the same unemployment rate in Germany. What was going to happen? There would be a revolution in Germany with 32% unemployment rate and 70% unemployment rate among youth. When a German kid gets graduated from university, he can find a job. Do we have the same situation in South Africa? We've got so many kids sitting at home, they can't get a job, even though they were promised that if they go to a university, they will get a job. But they can't get a job. So our issues and our challenges are different than Europe, different than China, different than Russia, different than United States. So we need to find our solution. And like, you know, I gave this example before. Saudi Arabia is producing about 10 million barrels of oil a day, in one day, 10 million barrels. Can Saudi Arabia be said that they should stop producing oil? What are they going to say? They're going to say, are you mad? So why are we listening to some European critics and saying, no, we need to ask Sasol to cut the emissions. We need to ask Eskom to stop coal-fired power stations. Camden, Arnott, Hendrina, we must stop those coal-fired power stations. Where are we going to get the power from?
We will be back with some more of Vuslat's views on what he thinks we are doing wrong when it comes to the energy transition and the relationship that we have with fossil fuels in this country. We continue our conversation with Vuslat Bayoglu. What would you like to see happening in terms of all the policies we are looking at in the just energy transition and our policy on fossil fuels and climate change?
Look, I think we need to have a dialogue about like what are the right things for South Africa. I mean, my personal view is we need to carry on with coal, but we need to look at like how we deal with the emissions. And there are some activities like Council for Geoscience is doing a very good work with Department of Mineral Resource and Energy. They drilled a hole in Leandra to deal with this carbon capture, utilization and storage. So if we can, that hole that they drilled is about 1,800 meters. And the geological formation in Leandra is suitable to capture, to store the carbon dioxide. So when we burn the coal, then we emit carbon dioxide and we emit also other gases. But carbon dioxide is the one that's the problem, the biggest problem. So if we can capture the carbon dioxide, which has got technologies to capture carbon dioxide, and then liquefy it and then pump it into the formation in Leandra, that the hole that they drilled, that could actually store a lot of carbon dioxide for South Africa. That I think they calculated about 30 years of power generation and the carbon emissions can be captured and stored, not can be captured, but can be stored in Leandra. So that's one of the big things that South Africa needs to investigate and see, like, if it's going to work. We had a meeting with Council for Geoscience as well. Like, we went one of our coal mining projects. We want to set up a small plant and then see if it can work, like a pilot plant, because we want to support that project. So I think if we deal with the carbon capture and storage, that could be a good initiative. And actually they use utilization, because what you can do is with the carbon dioxide that you capture and store, you can create further industries to make other products. So that's one angle that we need to look at, definitely, because we got cheap, good quality, abundant coal. We have to utilize coal to produce cheap power. And again, if you look at Eskom's cost structure, I mean, coal is producing the cheapest power. We're getting like about 60 to 80 cents a kilowatt hour cost from coal-fired power stations. And if you look at the same with gas, it's going to be more expensive, obviously. But the new builds, it'll be slightly more expensive because of the capital, but we need to carry on building coal-fired power capacity. I think we need to be serious about nuclear energy without making it politicized. Okay, I think if government can consider about like allowing third parties to invest in nuclear power capacity in South Africa, there'll be companies all around the world that are quite competent, coming from United States, coming from South Korea, coming from Japan, coming from Russia, coming from China. They will try to be part of this thing, but we need to make sure that we don't politicize it, because our energy security is above everything. If we don't have power, this country cannot be run. I mean, we saw it during load shedding. The hospitals were in trouble. Robots were not working. So it was a shame for this country. So we cannot go back to that. That's why it should be above all the politics. And we need to make sure that we got the energy security, because Eskom is planning, for instance, to stop Hendrina, Arnott and Camden by 2030. So what's going to happen when you take these three power stations from the system? We need to be very careful. And again, if I briefly talk about like what happens when you politicize these kind of things. They celebrated the closure of Komati Power Station. It was 1,000 megawatt working, which was refurbished in 2012. So they celebrated it. And at the same time, they were negotiating, government or the relevant departments of government were negotiating to get power from a ship outside Richards Bay, outside Durban, wherever. It's from car power ships. So you closing 1,000 megawatt, and then you're trying to buy this expensive 1,000 megawatt from a ship. Why? It doesn't make sense. So we should not make a mistake like that again. Okay? We should not involve politics in this kind of business. Eskom is our flagship. We have to make sure everything that Eskom runs properly. Okay? So that we as a country create jobs, we as a country keep the jobs safe. Otherwise, we will end up like going to the dogs. So we should never close a power station like Komati that we did, and we should never celebrate something like that, because Komati, I think, is a regret to the government, and Komati is a regret to South Africa. It should never happen. So the question that we need to ask, what happens beyond 2030? How can we make sure that we got enough power? It's not that difficult, but we need to make the decisions now so that the power stations are available by that time. And again, another point, my personal view, when Eskom decides to build power stations, we need to be careful with that as well, because in the past we saw how long it took Kusile to be built, and it was not really efficient. We should learn from those mistakes, and we should not do those kind of mistakes. So I think power infrastructure of South Africa and power generation capacity of South Africa needs private-public partnership. That's going to be honest, that's going to be good for the country, and that's going to be competitive, and that's going to actually produce cheap power for the people of South Africa.
As an investor yourself, do you think that the just energy transition and the government's path that it has taken towards that 2030 is making investment decisions for you difficult? Or should I say, how is it changing the investment decisions that you are making as an investor in the mining sector, in the coal mining sector in particular?
I think there are two aspects of this. If, for instance, government says they're going to close coal-fired power stations, which they are saying, by the way, because in 2030 they will be closing some of them, that would mean less coal to be produced in the country. So obviously, that would mean that Eskom doesn't become a really attractive customer anymore, because Eskom has got lots of long-term contracts and they will get their power. So if government decides to carry on, that Eskom should carry on with the coal-fired power stations with the latest clean coal technologies, that would mean that coal mining industry will actually build more coal mines to supply coal to Eskom. But the other angle is, Eskom says now they've got surplus power. So for instance, we are talking to them to sign a negotiated price agreement for ferromanganese asset that we bought from Samancor, because in 2020, when Samancor stopped the smelter, they said that they can't run it because they don't have consistent power. So we and the industry is talking about, ferroalloy industry is talking about a cheaper rate. When we say cheaper rate, not very much cheap, but maybe like 5 to 10% cheaper than a market-related rate, so that these smelters can run and employ South Africans. Okay, so in an environment like this, it's great. But then, let's say if I'm going to build a brand new smelter, can Eskom guarantee me power for the next 20 years? I think it's going to be very difficult. We need to get to a point where we know that Eskom is going to be able to build coal-fired power stations, or Eskom is going to be, like they think that they can burn gas. Eskom is going to tell the whole country that they will get gas and they will burn gas and they will produce power for the next 20, 30 years without having any issues. So as an investor, I need to understand, like, if they can power us in the ferromanganese smelter so that I can go and invest more. I think a lot of companies have got a similar situation, because to be able to compete with China, to be able to create jobs in South Africa, we need to be very, very careful. And we need to be very clear in our strategy. Look, China is an ally of South Africa. We are part of they're part of BRICS. We are part of BRICS, and it's a great success story. But if we want to create our own success story, then we can't rely on China. We need to have our own views. Is the world telling China to stop coal-fired power stations? Yes. Is China closing? No. Why are we listening to the world? Then we lose all the beneficiation capacity to China. We need to build cheap energy capacity. That's coal-fired power capacity. That's it. You can't do that with gas plus renewables. So when you build the base load with the cheap capacity, which is coal-fired again, then you can think about, okay, what about some complementary capacity with wind and solar? Yes, I'm happy for that. Also, like I think, for instance, this rooftop solar with some inverters and some storage capacity, it's great. It removes a lot of burden from Eskom, but that's for households. That's not for industrial scale. And by the way, who can afford to do that? That's a big question as well, because we got people who's living below poverty levels. Okay, we can't expect them to make power from solar panels. Yes, it's good for the people who's got like good jobs, good paying jobs, and all those kind of things. They can put solar panels on their rooftops, but we can't do it. We can't expect it for the whole country to be able to do that, because they won't be able to afford to do that. So my view is we need to look at coal more seriously. We should have our own stance, like Minister Gweda Mantashe has, okay? And we need to consider nuclear seriously, and our energy security agenda should be beyond politics. It should be like, we need this South Africa. We need to do this very carefully so that our generations coming will not be cursing us.
Some passionate views there from Vuslat Bayoglu, who has become a successful businessman and investor in South Africa, telling the South African authorities to rethink the way the path is currently going when it comes to the just energy transition and our relationship with fossil fuels. For Newzroom Afrika on Channel 405, I am Xolani Mbanjwa in Sandton, Johannesburg.